Welcome to the Next Gen CMO podcast, where we sit down with seasoned CMOs and emerging talents in sales and marketing to explore the wins and occasional losses that shape today's leaders and the strategic maneuvers that can help propel you to the forefront of B2B marketing.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the Next Gen CMO podcast. Today, we're excited to welcome Grant Johnson to the podcast. Hi, Grant. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Kelly. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming. It's going to be a good conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. For those of you listening, Grant is a seasoned CMO 5 times across a number of companies. He's currently the CMO of Billtrust. He's been at Kofax, Pegasystems, Symantec. He's been at a number of different organizations. He's got track record of growing companies, doubling revenue, scaling businesses, and really, I'd say even more important for today's conversation, building high performance teams and helping companies transform, which I think is probably a combination of both people and strategy and execution. So I'm excited to talk to you. As you know, our audience, or who we really focus this podcast on, is what we call next gen CMOs. So those up and coming future CMOs, we all find them in our companies. There's always 1 or 2 on my team that I say, that senior manager right there, that director right there, they're going to be a CMO one day. I can see it in who they are and the way that they think. And so that's really who we're going after, is those people who want to know what it takes to get to the CMO level. And so I was so excited. I met Grant a month or 2 ago in just a CMO to CMO connect through work. And as I learned more of your story, I was excited to hear about what you do to coach up and coming CMOs. So you run a business called CMOmentor.com, where you coach these up and coming CMOs. Tell me about this business. What drove you to this? What from your story got you to this, and what it is?
Well, thanks, Kelly. Yes, it's sort of funny that I started it last summer, and it just it took off. I was, as a marketer, we're always making stuff up, right? So I thought, well, CMO Mentor sounds good. I was shocked it was available. CMO Coach somebody had, but I've been mentoring probably informally and formally since I became a CMO. I was mentored by the CMO of Filed at IBM back in the early 2006. So it's been a while. Then I became a CMO of first of 5 tours at Pegasystems in 2009. And fast forward to today, 15 years later, I just felt like I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. I learned the hard way, as we all know. I just don't repeat those mistakes. And I would coach. I've actually mentored 15 CMOs. And, I had done it both formally and informally. I thought I might as well make it a formal practice. And my CEO today, he knows. I mean, he mentors folks. It's like, I can't do more than 2 at a time. I've got 1 now. And so, for the right person, I also mentor people on the staff, as you mentioned, the up and comers. You might notice them at manager, director. You just ask them, hey, do you want to be a CMO one day? And so I started the blog, and I had a little bit of catch up to do. I think got like 25 blogs, all around like best practices and, advice and coaching and some tidbits. I don't give out all my frameworks. I share those with those that I coach, but we all have our frameworks and, templates and tools, techniques to help us drive strategy and execution at the roles. But I really, in life at this stage of, having made it to the CMO and done that successfully at a couple stops, I love giving back. I love helping others. I love seeing their progress, as you know, and I know you promoted a number of folks, as you said, stars that you saw, expand and grow. That to me is rewarding. You have to chase more things in life than, just material, right? And so that the human connection and the reward of seeing somebody strive and achieve, and sure, they're going to have some setbacks like we all do, but you get back up and you stay the course. And that's why I started the CMO Mentor. I'm having fun with it. Honestly, we're looking to take Billtrust to several $100 million to the promised land. And at some point, I'll probably do more mentoring and less full time. But right now, I'm fully engaged in helping with the CMO mentoring.
That's awesome. What are the things that people come to you for through the mentorship? What are the most common use cases or the most common examples that people come to you for?
Yeah, generally there's a couple primary areas. One, they feel like they're stuck, right? There are some folks that are CMOs that I'm helping. Maybe the first time CMOs, or they're going from their first time in a PE firm, which is a lot. I've been at public, private, VC backed, like you have, PE, and they all have different expectations. And so a lot of times it's like, how do I get to the next step? What are the, strategies? What are the milestones? And then, one recently, this is also, fairly typical. And everybody has different length engagement. Sometimes it's a couple months. Sometimes, I'm in year 2 with, one person. Sometimes it's, 6 months. It depends what that person needs. And people say, well, like, what's your process? And I said, well, you can look at cmomentor.com and you understand how I think and my beliefs and my experiences. But I basically look at it like sort of an MBO, like, what do you want to achieve in the next 90 days? Where are the challenges? What are the hurdles? How will we know if we succeeded? So I'll take the most recent person that I'm working with. I said, I think this person was a little hesitant because I had enough people giving them goals. I said, but if I'm not pushing you, if I'm not challenging you, you can just get it off the website, right? So, we have weekly 1-hour calls. Everybody does it differently. I kind of like the regular touch, could be bi-weekly. It all depends. And so, this, in a lot of cases, there's another milestone, like they want to go public and they've never been in a public company, right? Or they want to get the next round of funding. They want to, have more success with their peers. We all know the challenge of working with peers because there's a natural tension. CFO, CMO, CRO, CEO. And how do you overcome those? What are the strategies, and working with this chief people officer on your team and the team dynamics? So there's a lot of things that if you, like you and I, if you've seen the movie and the sequel, and you know where you're going to hit a wall, so you want to avoid that. You want to go to some open pathway. And so that's it's a very organic thing. And I always say, like, after each month, like, hey, if you're not getting value, hey, let's just say we're wrapped. You got what you wanted out of it. And I'm fine by it because, it's my advocation. It's not my vocation, right? So, I mean, I'm okay if at some point I don't have anybody with mentoring. And I actually have somebody like you. There's a director on my team. She's super talented. She has a VP manager. And I said, you want to be a CMO, don't you? Yeah. So, well, let's make sure you and I have one-on-ones. And I don't try to overwhelm her with, advice, but I'm just an additional support tool and can help her think 2 steps ahead. Because, as you would imagine, her supervisor wants to make sure she delivers on our current MBOs, which is great. But I'm thinking about like the next ones for her.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think you're right. I feel like when I mentor folks, it's often a mix of both hard skills and soft skills, meaning like, how do I, prepare? Like, what do I need to do in order to take a company public? Or what do I need to do in how to build a brand or whatever? But a lot of times it's, especially with women, and I don't know if you have a difference on when you coach female versus male sort of future CMOs, it's usually interpersonal things. How do I communicate with authority without, to my leaders without sounding, I don't know, aggressive? How do I get my point? How do I get my message heard without confidently? How do I get people to buy into my ideas? And so those, I think, are the harder ones. Do you have any tips and tricks on how you coach on soft skills versus hard skills?
Yeah, it's ironic that you mentioned that, Kelly. I think I probably mentored more women than men. And I think on my teams, I remember I was hiring 3 VPs. It was a VC-backed company. And I was telling the chief people officer that I said I hired 3 best candidates. They turned out all to be women. And so I just look for the best candidate. And it's sort of the soft skill is to get 360 feedback. Like, you could better tell somebody what it's like to be a woman. I can't help you there, but I can certainly help you in how you're being perceived, male or female, and how you gather that feedback and how you address the feedback and how you check in to make sure that you've changed the perception. Because, I always find that when people are at companies, one of the hardest reasons to get promoted is that you are perceived through the lens upon which you entered that company, right? And so, like, if company's growing fast and you look for achievers and yeah, so you can get thrown into sometimes you've heard battlefield promotions or whatever it is, or fast growth, hop on the train. But yeah, I just think getting that feedback and talking to others who've been through that, like yourself, and say, like, how did you overcome that? And I just think having conviction and backed by data, and, you've checked this with, let's say you're trying a new campaign and, customers, it worked for customers, sales liked it. I think just don't go it alone. It's like, that's why I like mentoring. Like, you have to have probably in many cases more than one mentor for different stages.
Yeah, I love that. Don't go it alone. I think that's right. Sometimes just bouncing off. I have peer mentors, like my little crew of women that I text when I'm like, am I thinking about this right? What am I doing wrong? And then I have also the ones who are like, former CMOs. I have a board member who is a seasoned CMO that now just does board stuff. And I ask her a lot of dumb questions. So there's, I think there's definitely the mix. So at work, it's one thing, right? They typically work on your team or somewhere. But when it's outside of work, maybe through a CMOmentor.com, you meet people as sort of strangers and mentor them. But if they're more organic, or maybe even not, like, how do you bridge a line between being objective and so that someone will push you to learn and grow versus maybe a friend to bounce ideas off of? Like, is there a difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would add one other dimension to it. I've always been a networker. I've been part of the CMO huddles. Drew Nicer runs that. I'm not part of the CMO collaborative. There used to be something called the CMO club. Salesforce bought it, and then they, shut it down through a lot of things happened through COVID, unfortunately. And I just, I think, you need that trusted network, as you said. Actually, we also have a board member who's former CMO. All she does is boards, and it's great. I can talk about marketing, gets it immediately, brainstorms with me. But I think, whether you know somebody personally or just through a network, you kind of know after a few conversations, if you're like-minded, if you can be additive to each other, and you've had, quid pro quo, I think value exchange, you help me, I'll help you, or I'll pay it forward. I don't never mind paying it forward. I'm always happy to help people. But I find that with the actual mentoring, that it's somewhat easier than mentoring somebody who works for you, because you really have that arm's length relationship, right? You're going to have to hold that person work for you accountable. If they fall short, you got to tell them, right? I'm not only holding accountable the people I mentor to the objectives we mutually agree upon. But I can challenge them I'll give you an example, because I think those are the best cases. There's a current CMO I'm helping, and they're having a lot of challenges with the CRO. And I think there's a couple kinds of CROs. One that you can talk to every day and they partner with you. One that if they ever fall short, they need a scapegoat, and it could be marketing. And I think this person is kind of closer to the latter, which is not really healthy. They said, you're going to have to go have wine with this person or beer or whatever. You're going to have to put it on the table and say, look, we're going to have to work together. Otherwise, you at some point, the salesperson will miss a quarter. And even though you preceded them in tenure, you could be at risk, because it's easy to just point. It's a lot easier to point at, all the things you don't do in marketing versus sales, just not closing a deal, right? We all know that. And so you got to build, and he said, God, you're right. He's always too busy. And I said, well, you got to make sure you're the priority. This relationship is critical, like the CEO relationship, like the CTO relationship, like, the CRO, like the CFO relationship. And you have to prioritize relationships on a level. It's so easy to get consumed by, deadlines and deliverables. But I think it's, at the end of the day, we're in a people business. And if we can all, work collaboratively, in the long run, it'll serve us better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great call. We, for my company, we're really, really big on sales and marketing alignment, to your point. And that starts with relationships. Yes, there's metrics. Yes, there's target accounts. Yes, there's sort of operating models and technology that help with that. But at the end of the day, if my CRO and I are not in lockstep, which also includes our chief, our head of customer success and our chief financial officer and our product, like they're all part of it, but really that sales and marketing. Because you're right, when you get to that spot of troubleshooting, what happened? Why did we miss? Was it because marketing didn't do enough? Was it because sales didn't close enough? It's got to be a really honest, transparent, open conversation that's grounded in an assumption of good intent, because it's based on a relationship that was built on trust.
Yeah, I would just add one key thing, and out of the category of lessons learned, I could often, and I feel like every time I've been a CMO, I've been able to build a good relationship with the counterpart, CRO or chief commercial officer. But what I found is sometimes it breaks down across the line, down the line. So like the VPs, heads of regional sales, Europe, and they're further away and they're not getting along. You need to make sure you've got alignment up and down. You need to confirm, clarify priorities, what we're investing in, what we're not investing in, and it takes work. But if you do that, you have the organizations working together. It's noticed by everybody, and it makes a difference.
So it's not just a top down thing. It's really also getting that buy-off all the way through.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll pay attention to that often. I always think about as I'm like, okay, so I know that we're aligned. If I notice my team, I notice any hint in them that kind of says, well, if sales would, I'm like, like we're not going to, there's no finger pointing here. Like if you're worried about what sales is doing, go sit down with your sales counterpart and let's work through that. So, and I think that's good advice, I think, because I translated to mistakes I've made as a new CMO versus now I've done it a few times. But as a new CMO, I was sort of thinking about my career growth, my like sort of establishing my command as a CMO, being taken seriously as a marketing executive, whatever. And it's taken a couple tries, like if I'm like sort of able to say that before I've sort of realized the value of like, this is not a solo sport. It's a team sport for sure. And marketers, marketing leaders, CMOs specifically are successful when their CROs are successful and their CFOs, and we're all kind of bringing our teams along for the ride. But I think that's a tough lesson learned for a new CMO, like I said, who's trying to like carve their path and make their mark and put a stake in the ground.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And we all, and I've talked to so many CMOs, probably, 100 over the years, that we have to continue to communicate, over-communicate, collaborate more, market the value of marketing. Like, I don't care how you do it. It's, through the monthly marketing update that you send to the sales force. And you just have to validate that what you're providing is of use and it's being consumed. Just like, we all have our, portals, and you can create all kinds of content, but it doesn't get used. It doesn't help the connect to the buyer's journey. Then, take it out of the portal. So I think it takes a lot of that and the team. And one of the things also in this up and down, when you're early in your career, I think this would be helpful is, some of the audience are mid-careers. And I've always had this attitude is like, when you say jump, I say how high, right? And so we want to help sales, but you also have to be disciplined on what's feasible. You can't just say, yeah, we can do that. Saying no is okay, or saying, look, we can do this and this. That means, we have limited funds, a limited budget, limited bandwidth, and we'll take care of that in what's coming now, April, next week. We'll take care of that, but we're going to have to hold off on something else. And that's where you can kind of get in trouble. If the marketing said they could, move heaven and earth. Well, we can't. We can change the rotational axis a little bit, and we'll try that.
Yeah, I think that's a great call, especially, I think it's true in general, is being able to be clear, understanding your resources, requirements and your time and budget constraints. But I think that's really valuable for an up-and-coming CMO because they're wanting to be well received, right? They're trying to fight organ rejection. We both know that the life of a CMO can be pretty short. They can turn over CMOs really quickly. I think I hear 18 to 24 months or whatever it is, sort of the average. Obviously, I think founder-led skews that considerably, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation, right?
We can come back and talk about that one then. But it does mean that, a lot of CMOs know they're somewhat on a clock. And as a result, you have a tendency to just say yes to do and solve and as much as possible. But as a result, you kind of do a lot of things not well instead of a few things really, really well. I think that's a great takeaway for newcomers. Speaking of that, as you do a mentor program, it sounds like you've been running this for a while now. You've met with a bunch of different up-and-coming CMOs that you've mentored. What does success look like when you've finished a mentorship or even halfway through? Or like, what is a signal that it's working?
Well, I mean, there's some obvious and less obvious ones. If somebody was aiming to, given it a chance for a seat at the table and they achieved that, mission accomplished, right? Like if I'm working with a VP. And I'll be honest with you, I don't tend to work, directly on my staff. I'll help managers, directors, but generally they're at the VP level. I feel I can provide the most help, and it's a closer time frame. They're just like one step away. Maybe their CMO is thinking about doing something differently at, whatever stage in life, and they just want to make sure to help. When you're running when I'm running the business, you're running the business, Kelly, you don't have a ton of time to mentor your staff when you're always talking about like what opportunity or problem we're addressing. But if it's somebody who's outside, you have a very, hands-off, independent, objective view. And so what I look for is if, we've achieved the goals we've set, if there's not a new set of goals, we've sort of run the course, right? And if they feel like, hey, maybe there's some other skill that I need, and the mentoring's not working out. So I think, like everything else, it's sort of case by case basis. You feel like you've gotten to that level. There was one CMO who was going to a public company for the first time, and they said, "Look, my company is not going to support pain, and my fees are nominal. I'll tell you that. You can search CMO coaches when you talk to me. It's reasonable fees. It's just a sideline, right?" And he said, "Can I just hire you for the first 2 months?" And usually I'd like to have a 3 month, just because you're saying yes to somebody, no to somebody else. But I said, "Sure," because I really like this person. And he says, my company won't support, training, education, or whatever it is at this fee. I said, "That's fine. They're a public company. One would think they'd want you to succeed and as a percentage of your multi-million-dollar budget, but okay, everybody has a different view." And so that one was, by design and so we just kind of concentrated on how to make an impact in the first 90 days. So that was really what the focus was. And, I challenged some of the thinking and some of the strategies. And then at the end of the day, we went 60 days, and then at the end of 90, hey, how did it go? Great start. And so I wrote a blog, the first 90, the next 90, because then it's like sales, like, now, great. Now what are you going to do for me this quarter? You always got to be thinking about the next 90.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, speaking of that, just for really like tactical logistics, if someone is looking for a CMO mentor, let's say they come to cmomentor.com and find you, do most people pay for it out of their own pocket? Do they work it through their L&D budget at work? Do they ask their boss if they can like invest in a mentor? Like, how does that normally work?
It's a variety of ways. I think most use the L&D budget. They're just like transparent about it. Like, look, I don't feel it's a rare, most like, I like you went for, I've always been in tech, worked for, tech founders, and they struggle to understand marketing, work for professional managers who, work for those that came up through sales and general management who totally understood marketing. And, I've had CEOs that have coached us themselves. So, sometimes it's just simple. It's learning development. I have a peer group. I want to increase my chance of achieving or exceeding our goals. And so, but some companies aren't supportive. They don't have a learning development budget. They just like, you should know it all, which is nonsense. Like no CFOs knows it all. No, nobody does. And, we all have expertise. And I happen to have, deep expertise in brand development and in demand generation. Look, we all have to do more common product marketing and marketing ops and web. And as a multi-stop CMO, like you learn all this over time. But so I said, look, I've created 25 billion in pipeline, and I've converted it billions. And so you hire me as a pipeline consultant. I'm sure every CEO wants you to get more pipeline and more close one business. I guarantee I've seen it. I can help you. So sometimes, it's going to come through something and I'm helping them on it. That's one of the key things. We're not making it up. Let's really focus on optimizing the pipeline. We use Power BI at Billtrust, and I've got people ask about CMO dashboard. I used to have the serious Forrester decisions one page. I've got 76 things that I'm looking at, right? So, we really know how to fine tune every aspect. But yeah, in general, most companies, you talk to the CEO, I don't increase my chances of knocking it out of the park, for, $3,000 a month or whatever. Why would they argue with that when your budget's $1 million or whatever, 10 million? Like, but some do, in some cases they just say, hey, I've never, honestly, I don't feel comfortable asking somebody to pay out of their pocket. Other coaches might. I just said, if that's you, I just like, I know I'm going to provide the value, but some have, I'm sure some probably do that as well. I hope the company supports it. They should.
Yeah. That's probably a sign of a great company once it's investing in the development of their leaders. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love the idea of sort of the reframe. Like, okay, is this a CMO mentor, or is it a pipeline consultant, or is it a brand building consultant, or whatever the challenges you're trying to solve? Maybe that's the language.
Accelerate. That's my LinkedIn line, because I've been fortunate to pick companies that have doubled. And I've been a CMO more than 3 years, 3 times. So I beat the odds. And so I can help you beat the odds. That's all I can say.
There you go. I love it. Cool. So you have a blog, right, called Speed the Path to CMO. And I assume it's on cmomentor.com on your website. So you can find that blog. And this talks about kind of 10 things you can do to speed up your path to really becoming a CMO. What are a couple of those tips that you have off the top of your head? Do you think of them real time, or one that you want to share?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can't recall all 10. I'll be honest with you, but I tell you what, the first one is being intentional. And I kind of came up with that because I was mentoring. I've mentored sales CROs as well. our up and coming, because I understand how that all works together. And, this really strong VP of the partner channel, early 40s. And he's just like, what do I do next? I said, well, how did you get there? I mean, how did you get to be a VP at 40 and you're not sure what to do next? He said, well, I just took advantage of the opportunity. I said, well, how I got there is I thought about it after I got my MBA, and I was a product marketer. It was my first role. And then I became a director of product marketing, and I started plotting my path, and I was intentional, and I got feedback, and I had setbacks along the way. But I think that's sort of the first thing. The second is, I once had somebody said, well, you really are able to handle ambiguity well. And I thought that was a good observation. And I think the modern term to that is adaptability. My goodness, all of us could not have understood how the world would have changed prior to COVID, right? And so having adaptability, networking, as I mentioned, don't try to figure it out all by yourself. There's a lot of people that have done this before that can help you. Collaborating is great, and working on stretch projects. Just raise your hand. I tell people, I said, you may not get this opportunity or this extra project. The fact that you're willing to do it, I'll always remember that. Other leaders will remember you raised your hand, right? So there's just a few of the top 10, and just build your broad base of skills. I just mentioned all the different sub-disciplines market. There's this great quote. Drew Neiser, I have to shout him out, CMO Huddles. I've known him over a decade. He writes great blogs on LinkedIn. He was talking about some of the frustrations, and one of the comments is in there that marketing is a nonlinear multiplier of sales performance. I love that quote, because what we do, there's so many aspects of what we do. Learn all those aspects as an up-and-comer so you can help out wherever needed.
Gotcha. I love that. I love that be intentional line. I think about even my own path, the path that my sort of intention was the same thing, right? I got out of business school, went into marketing. I started in brand on the consumer side, consumer packaged goods. But my thought was, I want to get as diverse of experiences as possible pre-director, because I felt like if I could round out my skill set. So pre-director, I did brand, and I did campaigns, and I did demand, and I did content, and sort of all these different areas, so that when I got to the director, I wasn't sort of typecast as one arm of marketing, but instead I had touched so much. So when I got into the director level, I could continue to kind of spread my wings and pick up verticals and pick up comms and pick up, all these other pieces that allowed, so that it was sort of a more obvious profile going into being a CMO, because I had touched a lot more parts of marketing. Because my fear always was like, if I'm straight up in brand and I go all the way to like director or senior director just in brand, I'm just a top of the funnel marketer, and I'll never get the chance to kind of do the full. So I love that idea of sort of being really intentional in the projects you take. I always say I'll take want to and will do over can do all day long, right? I want people who are going to raise their hand and say, I'll take it. I want it. I have a will to do it. I have a passion to do it and to do it well. And I'll take that hunger all day long. So
yeah, I call them plusers. They do that plusers. That's good. I like that. And you did a great job. Like you said, you weren't typecast. You weren't pigeonholed, and your diversity of skills is always going to be of value.
Absolutely. We're awesome. We will put the link certainly to both cmomentor.com as well as the blog in the show notes for this podcast when it goes out. So I'm excited about that. Before we go, I'd love to ask if, one, is there anything else you'd like to add about mentorship? And then two, what's a fun fact about you that we don't know that the audience would enjoy?
Well, the fun fact, if I moved my head, you'd see 25 trophies behind it. I'm pretty competitive on the tennis court still. And I'm going to the Nationals, USTA Nationals at 4.0. And for my fourth year in a row to compete in Orlando on clay courts, which is great. I'm here in California, play mostly on hard courts, but clay courts are a little easier, ball slower, which I like, against some hard hitters. A little more time to get to it if you ever watch clay tennis. Even the pros have these long rallies. So yeah, that's my passion on the weekends. You'll find me on a tennis court somewhere. And now I get to do that next week in Orlando. And happy to say my son's on the college team, and he surpassed my skill level, which you'd always want your kids to do well or better. And he won't play with me anymore because he's a 4.5. I'm only 4.0. Pros are like over 5, 6, whatever. Well, yeah, that's the fun fact. And I think it keeps, I love about tennis. I equate this to business and life in general. It's like you have the physical aspect, but you also have the strategy aspect, how I'm going to find the opponent's weakness, the execution aspect. So it's a good analogy as chess is as well for business. You have to sort of put all that together. And by the way, have fun while you're doing it. So that's like marketing too.
That's amazing. Yeah, there's definitely a mental game. I grew up playing tennis myself, and I played up through senior year. And then it was one of those things I left in high school. I was like, I loved it. I played it since I was little. I played USTA tournaments all over Texas and had competed. And then when I finished high school, I was like, and that's the past. And sports, because I also played volleyball and ran track and softball. And I was like, okay, sports is in the past, and now it's time for a different adventure. So I went on to college and did different things. But I'm just now started. I was just in Vegas this week for the Adobe Summit, and we stopped by a sports book, and it happened to be the days off of March Madness. So like Monday through Wednesday when there wasn't any basketball games. So the sports on TV were tennis and hockey. And I just started watching, and these new young players are so fun. Like, I grew up watching McEnroe and, Bjorn Borg and Agassi and sort of all these guys. These guys today, these like young hot shots, and they're whipping through their legs and doing these like funny moves and hitting them over their shoulders and doing all this stuff. It's entertaining.
Well, absolutely. The athleticism, the training, the diet. I mean, it's, like I think some of the folks you mentioned, they say, yeah, we go have a few smokes and a couple of drinks before the match, the night before. I mean, these men and women, I don't know if you've watched any of these documentaries on Netflix.
Match Point.
Oh, yeah, Match Point is awesome. And there's other ones, but yeah, that's just the sport has been elevated. Plus the new rackets, they help me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should take it up again. Don't give in to pickleball.
Oh, I was going to say, I've given into pickleball. I have made the switch. My dad's been a tennis player.
Yeah, it's easier on the knees, probably. It's all good.
Yeah, my dad was a tennis player too, because my brother and I both played. And then just a few years ago, he was way ahead. It was probably 10 years ago now. He got into pickleball. So he built a pickleball court in his backyard. And so now every time we're at my parents', which are about an hour away, we play a lot of family pickleball. And the nice thing about it is my 10-year-old or my 11-year-old daughter can play, as well as my, 77-year-old dad. And we can all kind of pick it up. Tennis is a little harder to take on, but it's just great that they're racket sports, and that there's one that's taken my dad from tennis into retirement with pickleball.
Very nice.
Very good. Awesome. Well, if listeners want to find you, obviously they're CMOmentor.com. If they want to find you directly, what's the best channel to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my LinkedIn and my Gmail are grantyjohnson1@gmail.com. Like that's, it's on my LinkedIn, or you could just do it directly. If you're curious, happy to hear from you. And by the way, I should say we're a very happy customer of Demandbase. This is second company that I've been involved with it. And like any technology, you gotta put the effort in. You got to do, check-ins, and, there's new tools. Everybody's adding Gen AI, so we're excited about what's coming, what's here and what's coming. So make the most of your tech investments and get the benefits.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. For listeners, I did not pay Grant to say that, so I appreciate the shout out for Demandbase. Thank you for that. I'll take those all day long. So thank you, Grant. It was great to have you. Thank you so much. I know there's so many people out there who want to be CMOs one day, who want to have the tools and the resources to get there. And I know that they'll love hearing your story and reach out and engage with you. So thank you for your time. Best of luck with both Billtrust, the tennis next weekend, and then the CMOmentor.com. We're so happy to have you.
Hey, my pleasure, Kelly. You have a happy Easter, great weekend, and I look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Awesome. Thanks, Grant. Have a good one.